What's happening, everybody? Welcome into a brand new episode of Crossed Up. Anthony Sanfilippo's here. I'm Bob Wankel. Phillies coming off of a two-game split against the New York Mets over in London. The day after a disastrous ninth inning, kind of have an opportunity to sort of process what happened. And Anthony, I will start by saying this before I kick it over to you. You go over to London, there's so many different extracurriculars, there's so many different distractions. It's kind of expected, I think, to split a two-game set across the pond. It doesn't really matter who the opponent is. If you would have told me a week ago, look, you're going to go out there or over there and you're going to win one, you're going to lose one, especially with Taijuan Walker starting one of the games, you would have said, yeah, I mean, it makes total sense. You know, anytime you play in like those exhibition types of games, I think it's hard to expect a clean sweep. That being said, to the Phillies' credit, they are always in games, no matter what. They can't just lose normally. It's always got to be like what you saw yesterday, where it's like late in the game, extra innings, walk off, what have you. They should have won that game yesterday, and it was kind of a meltdown spot against a team that's not very good, and they sort of melted down in a couple different ways. So I would more than gladly excuse this in a vacuum, but kind of an ugly loss, man.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Like, I mean, we look at it.
That right? Did I get that right?
You did, and the reality of it is, it's one loss in June to the Mets. Big deal. It's the thing of it is that we look at this team now through a different lens, and they've created the lens for us to look through this, right? They've created this to be, we are the best team in baseball record-wise. We are going to be like this all year. We told you we're going to get off to a good start, and we did. We are World Series or bust, and it's not changing. We're all in on this year. And so therefore, if they had won 8 or 9 fewer games going into this, and you're like, okay, it was just another game. Yeah, disappointing in the moment, but whatever. But we look at this team through a different lens now, and the expectation is so much higher that when you lose a game in that style where things go wrong in multiple ways, it frustrates you a little bit more because of that particular thing, because of that expectation level that as up to where it is. So when you have a game where your third baseman can't see the pop-up and it falls, where you have a game where there's a fly ball to center field and the center fielder maybe loses sight of it and then it bounces over his head. Not that cost them anything, but it happened. Where your relief pitchers maybe aren't as sharp as they've been, and you hit a batter, you'll throw a wild pitch that probably should have been caught by the catcher if he turns his glove the other way. When all those things happen and then it ends on a 2-3 double play, something that has never happened in the history of baseball before to end the game. The 2-3 double play has never happened in the history of baseball until yesterday.
Hell of a play. It was a hell of a play.
Yeah. So when all that stuff kind of happens to you, it's like, yeah, if you're a World Series team, these things should not happen. I don't care that it's one game; those things should not happen. And so the loss doesn't bother. Losing the game doesn't bother me as much as how it was lost, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I mean, look, just look at this past week. Some of the other contenders around the sport. The Dodgers had a hell of a time in Pittsburgh. Then they go over to New York, and I know that the Yankees were without Juan Soto, but they win 2 out of 3 over the weekend. The Yankees are supposed to be this big, bad team. I don't care if you're missing Juan Soto. Losing a series at home to the Dodgers, it's not a great look. Right. Phillies split with the Mets. The Phillies also were riding a 4-game winning streak. They had won, I believe, six of their previous 7 games. Look, I don't know. You say that shouldn't happen to a World Series team. I would say that it's inevitable that it is going to happen to even a World Series team or the best team. But you are right. This is the expectation. Everyone expects that you go in all the time playing at the top of your game. You have a 3-0 lead late. You regain the lead with a great moment with the Dahl home run. Like, you can't lock it down. Like, Gregory Soto lights the game on fire, and then Jose Alvarado, who's been overall, I think, pretty good this season, but he was not good yesterday. He did not have it, and they just could not get a handle on the game, and then you have an opportunity to pull off a comeback late. And I'm not going to sit here and clobber Nick Castellanos. He's been a little bit better lately. He won the game on Tuesday night against the Brewers with the walk-off, so I'm not going to sit here and say he's not clutch or he can't get it done in a big moment late in the game. But, like, man, he had a pitch to hit early in that at bat. He fouled it off, and then it was kind of over from there. It was just a really disappointing loss. But I do think that this is what you run into with the Phillies. Like I said it in jest, but the pitching is good enough, and they are good enough, and I think competitive enough that they will rarely lose games that they're out of. Like, they can never just lose a normal game. Like, they can never just lose 7-1 or 10-3. And you're like, all right, well, that's baseball. That's the nature of the game. Every game they lose, it's like, if they would have done this one more thing or one thing would have gone differently, they would have won the damn game. And so I can kind of give them credit for it in a way, but also, like, man, you shouldn't lose that game, like, ever. Like, it just shouldn't have happened. And I do want to ask you this, because one of the things that has kind of been talked about here, I think everyone has acknowledged, and us included, has acknowledged what a great job Rob Thompson's done. It's really, I think, hard to dispute that. Has he had some moments maybe late in seasons where important calls have worked against him and people sort of maybe second guess him that way? Sure. You know, there's the Zach Wheeler Game 6 in the 2022 World Series. Johan Rojas hitting in a Game 7 last year kind of came back to hurt them a little bit. All of these things, right? But, you know, yesterday you see a situation where I'm watching that game in real time, and people were like, well, how do you not leave in Taijuan Walker there? He had success against Nimmo. Walker was throwing his best game of the season to that point. That was not my problem with what happened at all. I don't need to see Taijuan Walker go through the Mets order a third time, even if he's pitching well. There's nothing about what his season has been to date that suggests that that is a good idea. And in fact, I've actually been very critical of the Phillies for maybe sticking with Taijuan Walker too long in previous starts. But to me, I do think it's a valid criticism when you have Matt Strahm, who hasn't thrown since Tuesday, sitting there for a potential multi-inning appearance. You're at the heart of the Mets order there. If they're going to get back into that game yesterday, it's probably happening in that 6th inning. I was very surprised that they went to Gregory Soto in that spot. And I know that it's realistic to expect Gregory Soto not implode to that degree. Like, at some point, if this guy is going to be a guy for you, you're not managing every game like it's Game 7 of the World Series. You need to see if guys are capable of performing in a spot. So it's not like that was the ultimate high leverage moment. You would have thought that maybe Gregory Soto could have gotten somebody out. That being said, I thought it was a pretty obvious spot for Matt Strahm to come in and kind of extinguish this thing and not even let it escalate. Well, what was your take on it?
Yeah, I agree with you that my thought was Strahm was going to be the guy there. I was surprised that it was Soto. You're right. He only needs to get one out. It's all he needed was one out. If he could get one out, he's out of the inning. And he doesn't go to Strahm. And that's usually when he goes to Strahm and is in those spots. And maybe he looked at it and said, I don't want to burn Strahm for a third of an inning or have him do an up-down because, you know, obviously he ended up doing it anyway because he had to come in for Soto once Soto couldn't get a guy out and got out of the inning. But then, you know, he got into a little bit of trouble himself the next inning. Strahm, Phillies get out of it. You know, Hoffman comes in and gets the last out, which is great. But I think so I can kind of partially understand Rob's thinking there. But the thing of it is that you had 2 days off and you had a day off following. And I could see him saying, well, I want to line up Strahm for the 7th, Hoffman for the 8th, Alvarado for the 9th. Why isn't Orion Kerkering in the mix here? I know he pitched Saturday. But again, with all the off days, is that really a thing? Like, so in my mind, okay, maybe you wanted Walker to get through 6 and he didn't. So let's let Strahm get out of that mess. And because then you don't know what's going to happen. What if they score more runs? Then you can always go to Gregory Soto if you want to at some point, right? You don't necessarily, so you don't know what's happening. So in the moment, let's protect this lead. I want one of my best 4 guys protecting a lead. I don't care if it's just one out. And I think so. So that's why I have a problem with not going to Strahm there, although I do kind of understand Rob's thought process behind it.
We had a conversation early last week following the loss to the Cardinals on Sunday Night Baseball. Gregory Soto comes in, 10th inning, gets the second out. There's a runner on third. Then he gives up a base hit. Phillies don't score in the bottom half of the 10th inning. They lose the game. I'm not going to absolutely kill a guy. And I think we had a very fair conversation about Gregory Soto following that game where it's like, look, you give up a run in the 10th inning and extra innings. Like, does that really say anything about you as a pitcher? Maybe it doesn't. But it has sort of fed into this larger story that he has not been himself this season. He has not been what the Phillies expected him to be, and he has not been nearly as good as he was even a year ago. And this game yesterday, like, this was bad. Like, there's a difference between giving up a run in a ghost runner situation in extras versus, like, you can't get one out in that spot. Like, guys throwing 97, 98 with a funky delivery to a degree from the left side, and he can't get anybody out. I mean, like, man, opponents are hitting 324 against him this season. They hit 210 against him a year ago. His whip is over 2. I mean, you know, at what point? 5.40 ERA here now, 24 appearances. He's not getting anybody out. And as good as this bullpen has been, and I mean, it has been damn good since the beginning of May, especially. Maybe the best bullpen in all of baseball. So when things are going so well and then you have this happen, I think maybe it creates more of a shock to the system. Like, this is baseball. Bullpens are going to blow leads once every 2-3 weeks, maybe. It's going to happen. But, like, Gregory Soto at this point, like, I know that there's upside there. I know the velo's there. I know that he's got experience. He's a former All-Star. He should be better than this, but he's not better than this right now.
Mm-hmm.
To me, like, I don't want him on the mound with a lead until he figures this out. Sort of the Sir Anthony Dominguez reset here maybe might be the more appropriate. I'm not saying DFA the guy, but
no, yeah, and I think that
he's not the guy right now.
I think that that's what they're going to have to do. I was just about to say this, Bob. Like, I look at that bullpen right now, and Dominguez has kind of regained some trust. I mean, he's pitched really well, basically for the last month. Still walks maybe one or two guys too many, but other than that, he's been a lot better. Hasn't given up a run. I think it's 8 straight appearances, 9 straight appearances, something like that. So there's a lot of trust in that bullpen right now. And the one guy you don't have trust in is Soto. And you go back to the end of April, no one had trust in Dominguez, and he kind of re-earned it. And so I think that you got to do the same thing with Soto. I think he's got to re-earn your trust. Put him in only in low leverage spots until he figures it out. And then once he does, yeah, go ahead, give it a shot again. I agree with you. You're not DFAing Gregory Soto at this point. That would be silly. But I do think that he needs to be not in consideration for tough spots for a little while until he can find out why he's getting hit at a 324 clip.
Yeah, I thought yesterday was a little bit eye-opening in that regard. Up until yesterday, it was like, he hasn't been great. The numbers aren't very good. He's not been fantastic in a couple key spots late in games. I don't know. But yesterday it was like, okay, this is not good. This is one that you can pin fully on him. And I think that there's something to be said for trying to see what your guys are capable of. That's why you don't always run out the optimal lineup. Can my guy handle this spot? Can I trust him moving forward? I'm trying to gain information about what I have as the season unfolds. And I don't kill Rob for that, but I do think if you were really trying to give yourself the best chance to win that game yesterday, in the moment, easy to say now, but in the moment, I was like, wow, Gregory Soto, we're going to do this? Like, and it just didn't work.
Yeah. I was also, you want to talk about another decision by Rob that I was maybe not, I mean, I wasn't surprised by, but I would probably have thought about it a little bit differently, is once Alvarado gets into trouble in the 9th inning and it's become obvious that he's yanking pitches to the, right-hand batter's box, do you think about going right on right and go Kirkering against Alonso in that spot? Bases loaded, 1 out. He's already thrown 30. He's already thrown 30 pitches, right? It's obvious he wasn't at his best. To me, I think that's a time where I look at it and say, I know you want to trust your guy, but at some point you have to look at it and say, the gut and the heart are telling you two different things. It's telling one thing and the head's telling you something else. Like maybe you listen to your head at that point, and go and get somebody. Just go out there and say, look, we love you, but today's just not your day. We're going to let somebody come in and pick you up and try and get the out. Like, to me, that's what I would have done.
And I will give the Mets some credit in this equation. I mean,
they took a lot of good pitches.
Tyrone Taylor, especially in that leadoff spot.
Yeah.
It's a 2-2 count. He fouls off pitches 5 and 6, gets it to 3-2, fouls off an 8th pitch. And he works a walk in a 9-pitch at bat. So you do have to give him some credit for fighting through that. It's not like Alvarado came out, went ball 1, 2, 3, 4, see you on first base. Now, watching that in real time, you're like, you cannot walk Tyrone Taylor. He's a 230 hitter. Like that's just unacceptable. But there was a battle element to that. Then the McNeil single was kind of frustrating in a way. McNeil hits the ball hard. It was 102 off the bat, but kind of having watched the way that stadium played over the weekend, the way that turf played, I couldn't help but think, and perhaps this is optimistic, if that's grass, if that's a traditional surface, is that ball maybe just a little slower up the middle? Stott's one more step to his right? Is that a 4-6-3 double play? Like, maybe.
Even if it's not a double play ball, it might at least be one where he kind of has to, he gets to it. And you get the lead runner, right? You get at least one of them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think so. I think you're right.
It's just tough. I mean, when you go Taylor, McNeil, Vientos, and all 3 guys are on base and it's a tie game before you even get to Lindor, that's not great. Now, of course, Alec Bohm kind of contributes. You get the bouncer to third base. He tries to barehand. He's thinking about maybe making a play at home. If you go back and watch the replay of that, certainly it would be a difficult play for him to get the out at the plate. But you can also see JT Realmuto with his arm out saying, go to first. And he didn't have the same instinct that Realmuto had off the bat. And then he kind of gets caught in between. And that sort of helps spark the disaster. And then you walk Torrens. I mean, and that's no good. I mean, like it was very clear at that point, like this is not going to work out. Now, to his credit, he bears down, gets Lindor. I kind of thought he was going to get Alonso. I was like, he's going to come all the way back.
He had him. He had him. 2 strikes. You had him.
So I don't know. I really don't know, man. It was one of those innings. They're going to happen, but when it's the Mets and it's on a national stage and you get this dramatic moment from David Dahl and you're thinking like David Dahl out of nowhere is going to come up and he's been here for basically a week and he's going to win them a game on national TV and stick this one in the video yearbook. And instead you get that. It was tough. But, again, and the only other thing I'll say is, to their credit, they come back. Christian Pache, who's not swung the bat well, good at bat to lead things off with the hit. Realmuto hit by the pitch. Harper singles. You knew he was going to deliver in some capacity there. Once Bohm walks, I'm thinking they're going to win this game. Castellanos going to find a gap. They're going to walk this game off and win it, and it wasn't meant to be, and it just didn't. It didn't happen. There are 2 things I want to talk about right now. Phillies have gone through a little bit of a stretch here from an offensive perspective. I did not rerun the numbers ahead of the show, but it was funny. Through 3 innings on Saturday, they were 1 for 10 at the plate. I had sent out a tweet about how the Phillies over the past 12 games, basically dating back to May 24th, were 25th in Major League Baseball in batting average. And then they exploded for the 6-run inning in the 4th. They coast, they win the game. And I said to everyone, you're welcome. They still have not really swung the bat tremendously well. Now, they did score in the 2 games 12 total runs. Generally speaking, if they score 4 or 5 runs, they win the game. It's been almost automatic this season. So this isn't maybe the right show to come out and pummel the offense and say, like, what's going on here? How concerned are you? But there are 2 guys that I do want to look at in particular. And it's one guy that we haven't really talked about at all in a negative capacity this season, but all of a sudden you sort of blink and we're talking about Alec Bohm being like top 5 MVP consideration just based on the start that he had. Not that we felt that he was going to stick around and actually do that. He's the clear-cut starter for the All-Star game. And I think that that's still true based on the production of other third basemen around the league. But his last 15 games, he's hitting 169 with a 493 OPS. 169 with a 493 OPS. Last 30 games, he's hitting 220 with a 586 OPS. Like, this isn't a week now. This is like a decent stretch of games. He's 27 for his last 123 with 2 home runs. What we're seeing right now is kind of what we've seen at other points with him, where it's like mediocre defensively, and change my mind about that. Like, I keep saying, like, he's average at best defensively. There's like this idea, like, not to share the secrets of the Slack, but old friend Kyle Scott is trying to tell me that Alec Bohm is good defensively, above average.
No.
I said, I don't think we're watching the same thing, my man.
I mean, the thing of it is he's better than he was when he first came up, and so everybody thinks, well, look, he's good.
Yeah.
No, he's improved. That doesn't mean he's good. He's improved.
So
big
I guess
difference in the wording there.
Players get hot, they get cold. It's going to happen. There was no world where he was going to hit 330 for them this season. There was no world where, I mean, you still look at the doubles relative to the rest of the league, still at the top. Like, he's super productive overall. The fear for me is, like, we keep talking about, is he turning the corner? Is he taking that next step? Is he becoming more than maybe what we thought he was going to be? Because it felt like we've seen flashes from him and we wondered, like, could he be this all-star level player, like truly an above average elite level offensive player, an elite level hitter? And we thought maybe we're seeing that now. Still pretty good, but like, were we kind of fooled on this, or are we just kind of a prisoner of the moment here where things aren't going well and he'll be better than this? Like, because at the end of the day, what happens, and I feel like we do this every year, it's like he goes on a run, we get excited, we see a guy who's 6'5", he's strong as hell, he can drive the ball out of the ballpark to any field. The numbers start to pile up, and you're like, here he is, he's becoming more, he's more, and I kind of fear that maybe he's not again.
Yeah, I noticed it. What game was it where they intentionally walked Harper to get to Bohm late in the game? It was recent. Was it Milwaukee? I forget what game it was. And that's when it dawned on me that teams probably don't think as highly of Alec Bohm as maybe a lot of other people do at this point, because it's like even though Harper had been struggling, Harper had not hit well either. They're looking at it and goes, well, yeah, but we know who Bryce Harper is. He lives for these moments. Put him on base. We'll take care of Alec Bohm, even though there's runner in scoring position and he's the best batter in baseball with runners in scoring position and all that good stuff. We'll put an extra runner on base for him and rather face him than face Bryce Harper. And so, like, it was at that moment that I looked at it and went, okay, maybe, the bloom is starting to come off the rose a little bit.
Yeah.
And he had 45 RBI through his first 49 games. Which was unbelievable, which was we knew he couldn't keep up that pace.
Right.
He's only driven in 5 runs since May 22nd. And that's
his last 15 games, he's driven in 5 runs. And just to give that some context, that was the final game of the series against the Rangers. So basically right before the start of the road trip where they went out to Colorado.
Yes.
That's almost like the start of this. And if you really even back it up further, on May 5th, he had a 1.006 OPS. Okay. And that was when they were in the middle of sweeping the Giants at home. Since then, it's really just almost been a linear decline in terms of his overall production. Mm-hmm. Like, if you go Baseball Reference game log, you can just see it slip. By May 15th, it's 919. By May 31st, it's 852. Fast forward 10 more days, now you're at 815. I mean, his OPS has dropped by almost 200 percentage points over the course of 35 days now. I'm not expecting it. At no point did I ever think that Alec Bohm was a guy who was going to have an OPS sitting around 1,000. That's unfair to think that he's going to maintain that. But am I surprised to see this drop this soon, this quickly? A little bit. So again, I think it just kind of puts us back in that place with him where you go, nice hitter, does a lot of things well, capable of driving in runs. I like him. Not to say that he's a bad hitter, but is he Is he a guy that is taking the next step to becoming a special hitter? Numbers sort of suggest otherwise.
Yeah, I agree. And it's really, when you keep talking about those 15 games, you even said, oh yeah, he's still hitting the doubles. I think he still leads the league in doubles. I think he's at 23, right? Well, he's only got 3 in the last 15 games. He had 20 in the first 49. So
again, guys get hot, they get cold.
Yes.
That's the season. 2 weeks from now, he could get hot, and we're sitting here saying, "Look at Alec Bohm. He's back up to 860 OPS," and he probably will. But I guess it's just a little disappointing when sometimes you're hoping that a run says more about a player. It's not, oh, cool, like, let's just react to what's happened and now talk about the numbers. With him, you're like, man, it just always feels like there's a little bit more there. There's a little bit more to unlock. Maybe he's finally doing it, and now it's sort of like a pump the brakes type of moment. I don't want to isolate Kyle Schwarber again, but it's just it continues to be so weird with him. I don't know if you have any new information on him or any other specific individual player takes about offensive production at the moment. The only thing I will say, it's like, I would have bet money if I were doing it that Kyle Schwarber would have homered in London. I'm like, he's due, he's going to get it going. And it's just the same thing. It's like single, walk, couple strikeouts, ground out the second, single. Like, man, where's that run at? I keep waiting for it. Where's it at?
Yeah, it's funny because it's like everybody's waiting for June Schwarber to arrive, and I texted you yesterday. Maybe it's a June Schwoon, is what I'm calling it so far. I know it's only 8 games in June so far, but he's back. It's 179, 281 on base, 460 OPS, no extra base hits, 1 RBI. I mean, yeah, right now Kyle Schwarber is going through it a little bit. And again, like you said, you expect there to be ebbs and flows, and this is an ebb for him, right? But the power has just not been there. And I mean, I do think it'll come still at some point. I mean, I remember it was about a year ago. We sat here, we were talking about the Phillies and saying, geez, Kyle Schwarber might be the only guy to hit 20 homers for them this year. Mm-hmm. And then they ended up having 5 guys that hit 20 home runs, right? Or something. It might have been 6, actually.
I think it's important to note that because it was right around this time a year ago.
Yeah, and it was like, and the numbers were telling us, no, he's going to be the only one. And then it was like, all right, Harper heated up, and Castellanos heated up, and Turner heated up, and Bohm got there. It was like all these guys getting there, and it was like, Real Muto. Oh, all right, okay. So I do think that time of year is still coming when Kyle Schwarber will hit a bunch of home runs. But I think it's safe to say at this point he ain't getting to 47 again.
Yeah, you'd have to.
that's not happening.
An all-time heater.
That's not happening. I think can he still get to 30, 33? Yeah, and that'll be okay as long as he keeps the batting average and OPS up, or on base percentage up where it is. That'd be good.
I'm sitting here looking at it like runs per game. Phillies are number 1 in the National League right now. They're one of 3 teams averaging over 5 runs per game this season with the Orioles and with the Guardians. And it does feel like a little bit like the offense is running on fumes, though, does it not? Like, doesn't it kind of feel like they need a reinforcement? And then you start to think about it, and you're like, oh, they're going to get one. His name's Trey Turner. He's a $300 million player. And by the way, he was hitting like 360 this season and was probably their most dangerous, consistently dangerous offensive player. It's kind of nice that they're going to get this guy back. Like, as great as Edmundo Sosa's been, like, this does feel like that this offense could use a little extra help, a little extra jolt right now, because it does sort of feel like they're, I guess, just sort of feeling their way through things right now. It still remains really productive, and I feel insane for questioning it. Don't you? Like, sometimes it's like you watch this team and you're like, well, this isn't very good, and then you go and you look at the numbers, you're like, well, actually, they're really good. And compared to the rest of the league, they're really good. Like, you might feel like the bullpen's unreliable sometimes. That bullpen's outstanding. I'm sitting here picking apart a lineup that leads the National League in runs per game. Like, I guess it's about expectation, but I just think, you know what it is? It's like if this offense is going to be good long term, it's because I expect Schwarber to power it, because I expect Bryce Harper to play at an MVP level, which he is. He's doing a great job. I expect like a Nick Castellanos to give me those 60 extra base hits. I expect Bryson Stott to take that next step, and he's kind of been going through it here for stretches. Alec Bohm was that guy for a minute, but now he's not. Like, it's not the end result has been great, but they've gotten so many contributions from the fringes that it's sort of overshadowed some of the, I don't want to say shortcomings. I don't think that's the right word, but just some of the inability to be the guy that you want some of these guys to be.
Well, here's what I'll say. This is chronic in all of baseball, right? I mean, if you look at it right now, the league batting average is 240. The league OPS is 699. It's under 700.
Yep.
That's the entire league is under 700 OPS. So nobody's hitting. And then the pitching numbers are better than they've been in forever. I mean, ERA is under 4, 3.98. WHIP's under 1.3. It's at 1.261. Like, that's including like the worst teams, like that are mixed in with that, and those pitching numbers are still what they are. So, I mean, you get frustrated about the Phillies and the individual players, and they're not doing it. And you're like, well, yeah, they're going to hit. But really, when you contextualize it within the entire sport, nobody's hitting. Like, this is what the Phillies are doing. And as frustrated as you might be right now, they're the best or among the best in the sport. So imagine what it would be like of being in another city right now.
You know, it's funny. I was with my father and my mother. I took both of them to the game against the Brewers on Tuesday night. Mm-hmm. And Christopher Sanchez is great. Phillies are trailing 1-0 late. Alec Bohm ties the game with the home run. They go on to win. Castellanos with the walk-off. It's a good game. And I know sometimes when I consume a game, I can be critical in the moment. And I usually kind of just do it because I'm like trying to be a smart ass. Like, I'll send you a lot of text messages that are, you know, quite sarcastic. And sometimes I mean them. Sometimes I'm just kind of like playing a part a little bit. And I know how I am, but I sat there and I watched this game with my dad for 3 hours. And I was like, this is brutal. This is how like a lot of people take in this team. Like, he's like, these guys can't hit. This is a disgrace. What the hell's wrong with these guys? And I go, Dad, they lead the National League. Actually, at the time, I was like, they lead Major League Baseball in runs per game. There is not an offense right now in the sport that is scoring more on average than this team. And you're telling me they can't hit and they all suck. And so like when I'm with him, I'm like, I'm the actually guy. You know, I'm like, well, actually, Dad, because like he hates Sir Anthony Dominguez. Like, he doesn't trust Dominguez, and he comes in and he has a great inning. He gets them out of a tight spot, helps them win the game, and he goes, he got lucky. And I'm like, okay, Dad, like it's okay, man. It's all right. Like, just take a deep breath. Like, they're not going to win 124 games, even if they lose tonight. Doesn't mean they're a bad team.
Yeah,
but I mean, I almost feel like the reason why I tell you this is because like sometimes I almost feel like I listen to him and I'm like, this guy's nuts. And then I sit there and watch a game and I go, oh my God, am I turning into this guy?
Yeah. You know? Well, let me throw this at you. I'll throw this at you. This is for comparison. Okay. You think the fans of the Seattle Mariners are pretty happy right now? Team's in first place in a division that produced the last 2 world champions, Texas and Houston. The Mariners are in first place by 5 games, right? You got to assume the Mariners fans are pretty happy.
Yeah.
You assume.
If you like pitching and defense, you love the Mariners.
Right? Well, I mean, that's the thing. I'm trying to say, let's put the Phillies fans in Seattle right now. Imagine if the Phillies fans were in Seattle right now. The Mariners are hitting 222 as a team with a 666 OPS. They're averaging 3.84 runs per game, and they're a first place team. Now, are you upset about where the Phillies are? Like, are you upset about the Phillies offense when you're talking about a first place team that is doing this? And it's not like they're barely over 500. They're 7 games over right now. Yeah. I mean, probably about where we thought the Phillies would be at this point in the season is where the Mariners are record-wise. And yet that's how inept their offense has been. So if you're going to compare, like the Phillies are, the Yankees, of course, are hitting better than the Dodgers and the Orioles. Okay, fine. but they're right. They're best in the National League. There's no better. They're top OPS in the National League right now. I mean, it is what it is. You know, only the Orioles are scoring more runs per game. I mean, it's hard to argue that.
I wrote a poll question in the newsletter a couple weeks ago, and I said, who is the team that you fear the most about the Phillies getting to the World Series? And I gave a list of options. I think I gave people the Dodgers. I gave people the Brewers, and I gave people the Braves. And then I also said none of the above. The Phillies are the only team that the Phillies have to worry about. And I'm starting to feel like, and I put that last option in there as a throw-in. But I think that the way that I'm watching the Phillies now isn't so much about looking at the division standings. It's sort of just looking at the Phillies and competing against themselves. Because, and here comes the all-time freezing cold take setup. I texted you the other day. Like we've talked on the show about Joe Giglio and the outlandish takes and how it's engagement farming. Okay. Well, I actually agree with Joe in something that he tweeted out in the middle of last week. And his premise was that this division race is over. It's over. Phillies have a 9-game lead right now on the Atlanta Braves, a team that has won the division, I believe, 6 years running. Has just absolutely dusted the Phillies each of the past 2 seasons when the Phillies were pretty good. Through 2 months, they were 19-9. They were scoring runs at a crazy pace, over a 680 win percentage or 675 win percentage, I believe, through April. Since May 1st, the Braves are 16-19, and they've given up more runs than they've scored. I have to tell you, I think that the Phillies are going to win this division running away. And I saw a couple people sort of rationalizing yesterday's loss. Not rationalizing, but like coming to terms with it. Like, tough loss, but the Braves lost again. LOL. And I'm like, yeah, they did. Like, and this division gap is real, but like, I'm sort of no longer, I'm looking at the Braves and I respect what they've done and what their pedigree is such that, okay, like I'll probably actually give them a little bit more credit for what they truly are in this moment, because what they are truly in this moment right now is not very good. The starting pitching's a mess. The offense has been inconsistent at best. I don't really care about the Braves at the moment. So when the Phillies blow a game, it's about the Phillies, not, well, at least they didn't lose any ground in the division race. That's kind of where I'm at with these guys right now.
Yeah, and I agree. And if you remember, what I texted you in response to that was, and I'll say it now. Like I wasn't willing to say publicly that I think that they're going to miss the playoffs, because I think their general manager, Alex Anthopoulos, is a really good GM, and he could go out and get the pieces that they need to hold on to the playoff spot, right? And they have a comfortable enough lead. I think if you look at the wild card standings at this point, that they are 4.5 games up on the first team that misses the playoffs. So they still got a nice little cushion in there, and they are the Braves, so they can't be that bad. But he might look at it and say, we're without our best pitcher, we're without our MVP. Do I really want to give up assets to try and get in as a wild card and make a run, and knowing that we don't maybe have the horses to compete with Philly and the Dodgers this year? And maybe he just punts, and maybe they drift back toward 500 and into that, mess of teams that are going to be battling for those spots. And who knows who the 3 wild card teams are going to be. And I think that that's a real possibility. I think he might sit there and punt, Bob, and go, hey, if we get in, we get in, but I'm not going to go all in to try and compete when we're missing our 2 star players.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You go back to Memorial Day weekend, the Friday of Memorial Day weekend, they lose 2 out of 3 to the Pirates in Pittsburgh. Okay, Pirates can pitch a little bit. They're chippy. Pirates are not a bad team. Fine. You come home for 4 games with the Nationals. You lose 3 out of 4 to the Nationals at home. And that was the first time where I said, and the Phillies were only up by 6 games at that point. That was the first time where I was like, that's interesting. Then you get Oakland for 3 at home. They win 2 out of 3, but they lose a Chris Sale start 11-9. And I'm like, the A's? Like, you don't sweep the A's at home? Oh, all right. Like, okay. They go out to Boston. they win 2 out of 3. Or no, I'm sorry. They play. They split Boston. Okay, no big deal. Good, fine. Red Sox are all right. Then they go down to Washington in like this revenge spot after you just lost 3 or 4 at home to the Nationals. They lose 3 out of 4 to the Nationals again. Like they're 2-6 against the Nationals since Memorial Day.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Like I actually said to you a while ago, I was like, could the Nationals be like a fringe wild card team? And I'm starting to wonder if maybe that's the case. Like
they're a game and a half out.
The Nationals are a better team than the Braves. The Nationals are playing better baseball than the Braves. And I know that sounds ridiculous, and it's definitely an overreaction when you zoom out far enough. But like for the last 2 weeks, the Nationals have been much better than the Braves.
Yeah, they're a game and a half out of a playoff spot right now. The freaking Mets are only 3 out.
Yeah. Yeah, it was yesterday's. Really, did we not absorb that game properly? Did yesterday's win save the Mets season?
It's crazy, man.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
So I don't know. And this is my thing. Like the Braves can get back into it, especially if the Phillies mess around. The Phillies have a little bit of a challenging week here. Going up to Fenway is not an easy place to play. Red Sox are entirely mediocre. They are the definition of mediocrity. They don't hit much, but they can pitch. We talked about how good the Phillies pitching staff's been, but when you ran all those statistics for a month and a half, the team that was even ahead of them in a lot of cases was the Red Sox. Mm-hmm. So the Red Sox can absolutely get you. And then next weekend's a really interesting series against a Baltimore team that's playing very good baseball right now. So the Phillies can have some hiccups here. The Braves can rip off 5 out of 6, get themselves back into it's entirely possible. And I know that. But right now, I don't want to hear, Phillies lost, but so did the Braves, so today was actually a good day.
Yeah, no.
I'm out on that.
Can I tell you that in this series against Boston, the game that scares me the most is the first one?
Well, you're coming off of another huge flight. There's been a ton of travel for this team, even with all the days off baked in. You get, what is it, Wheeler, right?
You got Wheeler against Cutter Crawford, who has not pitched well his last 2 starts, but for the most part, it's a pretty good pitcher. Yeah. It's the weird one. It's weird. Like you look at that and say that's probably the most favorable pitching matchup that the Phillies have. Because the second game you got Sanchez against Pivetta, which I look at as kind of an even Steven kind of matchup. And then the last one is Nola against what's his name, who's been on fire for them?
Halk, right?
Yeah, Tanner Halk. Yeah, and while Nola's probably the better pitcher, Halk has pitched to a Cy Young level so far this season for Boston. And so you look at it and go, well, this is the most favorable pitching matchup for the Phillies, and yet it's the one where I go, I think they have more of a chance of losing this one than either of the other two.
It's really interesting. Nick Pivetta has done a pretty good job for the Red Sox, and he's coming off of a start against the Braves where he blew their doors off. I mean, he went 7 innings against them, allowed 1 hit, walked 2, struck out 9. The start prior, he pitched into the 6th inning against the Tigers, who also cannot hit. You talk about another bad offense, but 2 earned runs, struck out 9, walked 2, pretty good. Now, he was not good against Milwaukee the time prior. He only lasted into the 4th. He had given up 5 earned runs, was not very good. But then the start prior to that, he goes against the Cardinals, same thing, 6 innings, only allowed 1 hit. So he's actually allowed 1 hit in 2 of his last 4 starts. So Nick Pivetta has done a nice job. Am I shaking in my boots at the thought of Nick Pivetta, dominating the Phillies? Not particularly, but he certainly has it within him to do it.
Yeah, the one thing about Pivetta and the reason I like the Phillies against him is he doesn't throw a lot of pitches. He gets out of the Red Sox get him out of games early. In fact, if I was looking at this yesterday, and I would have to. I mean, you probably have his game log up. What's the most pitches he's thrown in the game this year? Are you looking at it? You have that? I saw you looking at it.
Yeah, let me just bounce right back.
I guarantee you. I should say guarantee, but I'll make a
to start against the Braves. Oh, go ahead. I'll let you make the guarantee first.
It's not a guarantee, but I'll say he didn't break 100 pitches.
He has not. His past 2 starts, he went 91 pitches against the Braves. That was the second most he's thrown this season. He threw 93 against the Tigers in 5+ on May 30th. So he's not been a guy. Yeah.
So I think that the way that the Phillies work pitchers, I think that could be a game Nick Pivetta's out early.
Yeah.
So like to me, I'm not. That one doesn't concern me. Like I think that's a game that they're actually going to do okay.
Is this a week where you go, hey, look,
if you go 500, you're taking 500.
Two decent AL East teams. You're coming off this weird ass travel. I mean, their travel situation has been just truly strange these past couple of weeks.
Yeah,
Colorado to San Francisco to back home to London. Now it's just a really people kind of I don't think acknowledge enough like how difficult it can be to do that. Like you go east to west to east to internationally across the pond. I mean, it's kind of strange. I could definitely see the Phillies losing 2 out of 3. And I'm not sitting here saying that they will. Like I'm not predicting that. I'm not calling that. But this is a week where I think if you got through it 3-3, kind of hold serve, you say like, all right, I could live with that, I guess.
Yeah, I agree.
Until they blow a 4-3 lead in the 9th, and then we're asking 15,000 questions about like, should we be concerned about this?
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
I think that those were you know what we have to do? We have to talk about Taijuan Walker, and there's really not a whole lot to say about this other than that I will say from a human standpoint, I give Taijuan Walker some credit. He was not good against the Cardinals on Sunday Night Baseball. You and I, before that started, questioned whether or not if he were ineffective in that game, would that be enough to maybe have the Phillies consider removing him from the rotation? We sort of landed after the game that was not going to happen, that he's probably going to get a further run here. But the thing that I give him credit for, in addition to just pitching well, is that he stood there and took it after that Cardinals game. He said, this team has played so well, paraphrasing, this team has played so well, so many guys have contributed to our success. I'm not contributing right now, and I'm going to work my butt off to try to make sure that changes. And so I was... Not that we're rooting for the individual, because you can't do that as a Big J journalist, but I'll tell you, I felt good for the guy. I did. I like just the human standpoint of it. I said, you know what, good for you, Taijuan Walker, for going out and giving that team more than a chance to win yesterday. Really just straight up doing your job. They let him down yesterday instead of Taijuan Walker kind of holding them back. So I don't know if I'm ready to say, hey, he's taken a step forward, or I'm super encouraged, or that's the Taijuan Walker you should expect here over the next month and a half. But for one day, okay, like he was pretty good, and I was happy for him.
Yeah. It was like a we see you, Taijuan kind of. I mean, I thought he had great movement on his pitches.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was, the international air or whatever it was, but like
the outs were not happening by accident yesterday.
Yeah.
They weren't.
5 strikeouts looking. I mean, that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
He's finishing the bats, good movement.
Yeah.
I thought it was really encouraging. We'll see if he can build off of it.
Here's the byproduct.
Who would have guessed Whit Merrifield and Taijuan Walker being big-time contributors in London?
And David Dahl. Yeah. But here's the byproduct of this. Spencer Turnbull's not pitched in 9 days now.
Yeah.
And the last time he pitched, he was dominant. 3 innings, 6 strikeouts, 9 batters. Like he was dominant against the Cardinals, filling in when Ranger got hurt. Hasn't been seen since. And when is he going to pitch again? Like, is he just sit out there until somebody doesn't have a good start, and then you'll come in and pitch? Like, it's just, I don't know, man. I don't get what they're doing with this guy. It just doesn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense. But
let me give you this one. You can never have enough. I already know the answer to this, but if you just wanted to get crazy.
Yeah.
Like everyone's sitting here asking themselves, like, could you possibly trade Taijuan Walker? Could you trade Taijuan Walker at the deadline? Could you trade Spencer Turnbull at the deadline? Or is the insurance, because he has no role right now, you just said it, like he has not pitched in 9 days, and I don't know where he fits. I'm sure that there will be eventually another time where someone has a tough start and he throws 5 innings, and that's cool. But what's he going to do that once a month? So he has no defined role. He's been awesome. Is there a team that's like, hey, you know what? He's cheap. He's been great. We'll take him. We need a starting pitcher. Like, because the thing it's tough is because, like, the Phillies are going to need back a meaningful piece. So what team that's acquiring a middle of the rotation starter to make a playoff push is willing to part with a meaningful piece? So that fit right off the bat conceptually is going to be difficult. But like, would you at least explore that opportunity? Or is the insurance policy too too good to pass up.
I think it's too good to pass up because, and this is the only reason why, who's your next guy to come in to start if somebody gets hurt or somebody goes awry?
Nick Abel.
I
mean,
it's probably Michael Mercado, but I mean, at the same time, you don't have it's better to have this.
Yeah, so the insurance policy is going to be worth more than whatever, maybe a fourth outfielder or whatever it is that you might get back in that. I mean, I agree with you. It's just it's really an interesting situation because like we all know that things have a way of working themselves out. We said this a month and a half ago. They really haven't worked themselves out to this point, but you figure the time is coming where something is going to happen, where they're going to need to tap into that depth. But it's just so strange. I can't recall a scenario, maybe you can off the top of your head, where the Phillies have had a pitcher, especially a starting pitcher, that's been so productive, and they just can't really figure out a way to get him any innings. I can't remember a time where this was the case.
No, this is certainly unique. I guess this is it's kind of cliche to say it's a good problem to have. This is really a good problem, right?
You're not kidding.
So,
all right. Well, I don't know if there's anything else on the Phillies you want to touch on. If not, we could jump to one last thing. Right?
One last thing. But I think it's going to be more than just one last thing. It's a little bit more than that. It's a little bit more in depth. But I wanted to have a conversation with you about it. The Athletic put out their annual anonymous player poll. Some really interesting stuff that came into this player poll. There's a couple of stupid questions that we won't even get into. I might mention what they are, but they're not good. But I thought that there was a lot of things that were interesting, and some that they're interesting in their relation to the Phillies as well. You haven't read it, but just to give everybody kind of a sense. So there's 780 players in Major League Baseball, active players in Major League Baseball, 26 per team. They had just over 100, I'm not sure if it was 103 or 104, but something like that, who participated in this poll. So roughly 13% of the leagues. That's a pretty good sample size of your active players. And they asked them a series of questions. Now, not every player answered every question, but most of them answered every question. And so I just want to run a few of these by and see what you come up with and see where the Phillies fit in. So I think the first one's pretty easy, and I'm sure you'll have the answer to it. Who's the best player in baseball?
Shohei Ohtani.
Yes, but here's the thing. Less than 50% of the players voted that. Does that surprise you?
Well, they didn't put Caitlin Clark on the U.S. women's national team, so I mean, Caitlin Clark's also not the best female basketball player at the moment. Maybe there's some players looking at it right now saying like he's not a two-way player this season. Maybe there's a little bit of a fatigue with him. You know how that goes? Like you're a pro athlete, you're a pro player, and you hear the media just kiss one player's ass again and again, and you kind of go, yeah, he's good, but like he's a little overrated. He's not that good. You know, you do that type of thing. So maybe there's a hint of that.
Yeah. So that's what it was. Acuna comes second, tied for third. Mookie Betts, Aaron Judge. Fifth place, still getting fifth place votes. Mike Trout, even though he's hurt.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you think Ronald Acuna is better than Mookie Betts? And who was the other name?
Aaron Judge.
Do you believe that?
I think he's more versatile than Judge, but not Betts. I think Betts is, if you asked me who the best player in Major League Baseball is right now, I'd say Mookie Betts.
I think Mookie Betts might be, this is hard to say this, but I think he might be underrated.
Oh, I agree. I agree a little bit. Well, so here's the interesting thing. So 11 different players got votes. Would it be surprised to you if I told you 2 Phillies got votes?
2 Phillies got votes as the best player in baseball right now.
Two Phillies got votes.
I mean, Harper.
Yes. Okay. That's one that, of course. Okay, fine.
It cannot be a position player.
It's not. And it's the only true pitcher on the league in the voting that got a vote. Zach Wheeler got votes.
Wow. How about that?
How about that from other players around the league?
Yeah. Okay.
How interesting is that? That's why I thought that was an interesting thing. Okay. Here was number 2. Who's the most overrated player in baseball?
What's my answer?
Go ahead.
Shohei Ohtani. If Russ were here, he would say Mike Trout. I would say that there's
not on the list, by the way.
There's like a hint of that, just based on recent performance and injury. I don't know. I'm not sure who.
Jazz Chisholm.
Wow. Okay. All right. Poor Jazz.
But it's what
how'd you like to be Jazz? Just going about your business and
yeah. I know.
Did they give any other players receiving votes on that? I'd be curious.
They did give out. There was a ton of guys got votes. Harper is the only Philly that got one vote. He got one.
Man, I think it's tough to say that he's overrated.
Yeah, I think that's probably a personal thing there.
Yeah. That's you know who votes for that? The guy that sees him do the soccer slide heading towards the dugout and says, douchebag.
Yeah.
You know, that's
Exactly. You'll like this one. This was a great one. Here's how the question was worded. Putting aside stats and going solely on vibes, who do you most want on your team? And it has to be someone that you are not friends with or you don't know well. So that's the caveats. Like, putting aside stats, who's the player that you most want on your team based on vibes?
It's not Garrett Stubbs, huh?
What if I told you Garrett Stubbs made the list?
That's impressive.
Comes in tied for 11th with Kike Hernandez, Garrett Cole, Orlando Arcia, Jose Altuve, and Francisco Lindor.
See, like Garrett Cole to me doesn't strike me as a vibes guy.
Yeah,
like,
but Stubbs made the list. There are three other Phillies made the list.
I'll say I don't want to keep throwing out the same names, but I would say Mookie Betts.
Betts is number one overall.
See, I say that because I watched 3 Dodgers Yankees games this weekend.
Yeah, he's number one. He's number one, and it wasn't even close. He was twice as many as second place. So Mookie Betts was number one. But 3 other Phillies also made this list.
Vibes, huh? Harper's
on the list, tied for third.
Guy.
Tied for third with Acuna, Aaron Judge, and another Philly. Kyle Schwarber, correct. Yeah. Very good. And who's the 4th Philly? I don't know where it's at because it didn't give every player's percentages all the way down.
Is it a relief pitcher?
It's not.
See, because I would have said Alvarado.
Yeah, not on the
yesterday list. Aside. I feel like Alvarado's got big time vibes. I mean, I'll say Zach Wheeler, but
nope.
Nah. What do we got?
How about Aaron Nola?
Okay. I think Aaron Nola's a really nice guy. I think he's a good guy too.
Yeah.
I've never once been like, oh yeah. Huge vibes here.
Well, you know what I think it is, Bob, and we've talked about this.
Professionalism, like.
Well, not only that. I mean, he is kind of like the leader of that pitching group in the sense that after wins, they all kind of gather around his locker. They have that little circle where they take, they do a shot of whiskey or whatever, scotch, whatever it is they're drinking, and they just sit around. It's like a fireside chat with Grandpa Aaron there. But I mean, maybe there's some merit to that. Maybe maybe they look at that as a vibe kind of thing. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
I thought you'd get a kick out of that one.
I guess I'm having a hard time with that one, but yeah, all right.
Which team would you sign with if contracts, state taxes, and rosters were not a factor? And where do you think the Phillies came in this list? Because they're not number one.
Am I taking into consideration the fan base?
That's all it was. That's how it was said.
Geography, the prestige of the organization. Like, I guess those things would matter. It's weird. If it were me, I'll just tell you how I'd answer the question. I want to be really good for the Cubs. I feel like being I feel like Wrigley's awesome. I feel like the fans are cool. It's a cool organization. But I'm going to say, I guess it's probably like Yankees, Dodgers is probably like where this starts.
So the Cubs are tied for 5th with the Yankees.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay. I can see a lot of players actually saying like, screw New York. I don't want to, I'm not.
Well, there's an interesting thing about that. We'll get to it the next one. Dodgers come in tied for 3rd.
Okay. Wow. I don't know, actually.
The Atlanta Braves.
Really?
Interesting, right?
Interesting.
And I wonder if it's because they're the southern team and a lot of got a lot of guys grow up in the South and get to, that's the team that they kind of root for growing up. And that's what, or they look at it as an organization that treats their players well. And, they have a lot of good.
I mean, it's a and the fans are okay. Like, I mean, they're decent fan base.
They came in at 1, the Red Sox at 2. Then it was Dodgers and Texas tied for 3. Yankees and Cubs tied for 5. The Padres were 7.
Just the power of San Diego's,
the area. Yeah. And then the Phillies came in at 8.
Yeah.
The best part about it was there were 5 teams that received no votes. The 5 teams with no votes. A couple of them surprised me, to be honest.
Miami Marlins.
No, they got votes. Think about
it. I know there are people that would love to be in Miami, but Christ, as a player, don't you have any pride where you go I can't play in front of that fan base in that park? No way. The A's are definitely one.
A's are one of them, yes, for sure. The White Sox were also on the list, not a surprise. The Rockies, not really a surprise. The 2 that kind of surprised me a little bit, not that they're traditionally great teams, but surprised me a little bit. Detroit Tigers, it's a major market, right? I mean, whatever. And Kansas City Royals.
Yeah.
A little bit of a surprise.
Not the greatest cities. I mean, being real here.
Yeah. What organizations have bad reputations among the players?
I'm sorry, you say that again. What organizations have a bad reputation among players?
Bad reputations among players.
It has to start with the A's. It has to be
number Marlins. 1, and it wasn't even close. Yes.
Yeah, the A's are a joke. I mean, the Marlins, I can't imagine players thinking highly about that.
On the list, but not as high as you think.
Frankly, I don't know. I could see the Yankees getting votes there.
They did.
Yeah,
they did. So I wanted. It was more about the comments that I wanted to read. Where the 20 teams got votes. Phillies did not. Phillies were one of 10 teams that did not get votes, which is good. But some of these quotes are fantastic. They got to the A's were first of all, it says, I mean, have you seen what they're doing to the city of Oakland and their fans? The White Sox, it sounds like no one wants to be there day in and day out. It's like a grind. Like it's a grind just to show up to the ballpark. Mm-hmm. I couldn't imagine. It's not good over there. You could tell by how often there's turnover that it usually means something's going on. Mm-hmm. Players leaving the organization automatically doing better with a new team. Such poor communication. That's wild.
Yeah, that's not good.
Tampa Bay Rays, get this.
Yeah, I was going to say that as well.
Yeah, when it comes time to pay players, they usually trade them.
Yeah,
they get rid of you once you get expensive or close to it. They're not player friendly. The Angels, I've heard they treat their minor leaguers like crap. The organization is just run pretty poorly and pretty cheap. It's general dysfunction. And then the Pirates, it's more like they just don't know what they're doing. And the Rockies, we also got that as well. There was one more though that I kind of wanted to get to. Hold on, where's it at? Let me scroll down. This one. Have you ever seen, or this is a yes or no, so I want you to try and guess the percentage. Have you ever seen or heard of a player being put on the injured list when they weren't injured enough to merit it?
I'll say the answer is yes. It slants yes.
Yes.
That feels like a thing that probably doesn't happen everywhere, but happens enough that it's like kind of like, oh yeah, I've heard that before. I'll say like 60% yes.
Very close. 64.2.
Yeah, all right.
Okay. A couple of really good quotes here too from those who said yes. It happens all the time. We're either going to option you to AAA because we need a fresh arm, or we'll put you on the IL and you'll get your big league time. That's real. Wow. Which is why the players accept it, right? I mean, when you think about it, like if you're a player and you're not really hurt and they're putting you on the injured list and you're like, what the hell?
Yeah.
The way you look at the way that it's said, basically you're getting paid and you're accruing your time to be on the injured list. And so that's the trade-off. You're maybe not happy about it, but you accept it, right?
You might only accept it one time though, because you don't want to develop a reputation as well. You know, we're not going to sign this guy who's on the IL 3 times over 2 years back when. I think you got to be careful with that too.
Yeah. And then one other comment was, I don't know how the league can make a rule that combats that though. trainers have notes that cover everything. You can go on the IL for fatigue.
Yeah. It's
Good
interesting.
point, right?
Interesting.
So I just thought that was an interesting question. I really, really did. So there's other ones that, like I said,
Well,
check it out on The Athletic.
That was a fun one. Yeah.
Yeah.
You didn't have to check it out. We just did the whole thing for you.
We didn't. There was a few others that I left off. So if you want to read more, it's there.
All right. Well, great. Look, Phillies, Red Sox should be fun. Should be interesting. Kind of nice to see the Phillies play a game at night again. It's been a week. So I'm looking forward to that, me personally.
Yeah.
Fits my schedule better. And then they will head over to Baltimore head down to Baltimore, I should say, for 3 games as well. We will be back later this week. Please follow Anthony Sanfilippo on X at AntSanFilly. You can follow me at Bob_Wankel. Make sure that you're checking us out anywhere that you get your podcasts and on YouTube, and we will talk to you soon.